Good evening. My name is Pamela Brooks. I am one of the two judges that sit here in Loudoun County in the Juvenile and Domestic Relations District Court, and I would like to welcome you to our Beat the Odds ceremony. So welcome. Would like to tell you a little bit about the program. This is our 11th year, and this program is proudly supported by the Loudoun County Bar Association, as well as volunteers from different agencies. And that would include the Sheriff's Office, the Leesburg Police Department, the local Loudoun County Juvenile Court Service Unit Office, Department of Family Services, basically lots of different agencies, as well as a lot of public and private partnerships that have worked very hard over the years to raise money to give scholarships to young people who have been at risk in the community, but who have overcome a lot of adversity, and to help them be successful and head off to school. And I think it's the best job I get, because these people work really hard all year, raise lots of money, and then I get to hand the money out. So that's like the best job. So thank you all for your hard work, and thank you to all of you who come support these young people. As I said, this is the 11th year, and before tonight, these folks have raised and donated over $100,000 in scholarships, which is a tremendous... So just to tell you a little bit about some of the youth, not tonight's youth, but just the purpose of the program, the Beat the Odds scholarships are awarded to youth who have overcome significant life obstacles. Some of them have faced poverty, some of them have faced child abuse, some of them have faced family breakups, some of them have faced homelessness, substance abuse, domestic violence, things that you hear a kid has that in their life, and the odds really are stacked against them ever making it out of high school, let alone going on to college and leading a successful life. So we are very fortunate tonight to have our young people here who have overcome those odds, and we welcome all of you and your presenters. Later on in the program, when we actually give the awards, we are going to ask the young people to come up to receive their award, and it is up to the young person whether they choose to share their story. Not every young person is going to share their story, so I don't want anybody to be offended by that, and I don't want any young person to feel like you have to, because these are very private, personal details. And so just please respect their privacy, and if they choose not to share a whole lot with you. But before we get to the really happy part, we have a good part. Not that you're not happy, but they're what we're about. But I would like to introduce to you Kim Harrington. He's going to share a very important message with our young people and all of you, and I am positive that all of us will get something out of his message, so if you could just give him your kind attention.
Well, thank you, Your Honor, for that introduction, and I think it's appropriate that we give these young men and women a round of applause because of their courage, commitment, and will to get here today. All right, so if you really think about life at its most basic level, it's no more than a series of moments in time. Most of them are exceedingly forgettable. They happen and instantly they're over. We never think about them again. But they're the other ones. The ones that are as vivid today as they were when they initially occurred. When I was in the 8th grade at IS 59 in New York City, our class studied a poem written by Robert Frost. It was titled "The Road Not Taken." It was about two roads. One was well-traveled. The other one was grassy and it wanted wear. It was through that poem I learned life would give me choices. But that proved to be the difficult part. You see, I was born to a heroin-addicted mother and a career criminal father. So by the time I was born, my father had already spent half his life incarcerated. So I wasn't born with a silver spoon in my mouth. In fact, I had a shovel and hard labor programmed for my hands. So, when I was 15 months old, the New York City Police Department, along with the Department of Social Services, they came into our home and they removed me and my 3 siblings. So I later learned that the living conditions in that home were similar to those of a third world country. So no hot or cold running water, spoiled food in the refrigerator, clothes barely good enough to wipe off your shoes with. For the next 16 years, I lived in 5 foster homes and 3 group homes in New York City. A ward of the court. So I understand when people say you're nothing, you're nobody, you'll never be anything. I get it, I understand, I heard it. And I'm not going to lie to you, it was difficult. But only when it is dark enough can you see the stars. And there have been many stars in my life. My grade school teacher, Miss Hershey, she taught us a little bit about compassion. So she came into our classroom early one April morning. She was obviously upset. She was actually crying. And she said, "Boys and girls, we're only going to have a half day of school today. Your parents have been notified." Turns out that was the day that Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated. So let me tell you something about Miss Hershey. She loved us, and she loved being our teacher. So she showed her emotion because she cared about the community that she was serving. Moment in time. So when I was 7 years old, I lived in the Williamsburg area of Brooklyn, right across the bridge from Delancey Street. And you may have heard the term free-range kids in the media lately. Have you heard that? Mm-hmm. All right, well, knowing what we know now and having access to the information we have access to, I can tell you I don't agree with that philosophy. In fact, I turned on the news the other day and I said to myself, what is this world coming to? There are some evil people in the world. So why would you submit your child to that possibility? With that said, when I was growing up, my time, before cell phones, before pagers, before computers, we pretty much were all free-range kids. Some of you know what I'm talking about in here. Just be in before the street lights come on. You remember that? That was standard. That's how it worked back then. So I'd make my way up and down Berry Street, and there was this one storefront that used to always catch my eye. It had a large glass window, and it had a seal of a gold dragon on there. It was a martial arts studio. So one day I'm looking in there trying to see what's going on, and I feel a tap on my shoulder. And I turn around and look up, and Mr. Dees is standing there. And he was an older gentleman at the time, and he was real tall, 6'6", 6'7". But as soon as you spoke to Mr. Dees, you knew that this person, this man, had witnessed and experienced some terrible things in his life. He was from the Deep South, if you know what I mean. So he asked me, he said, would you like to come in? And I said, I can't. And he said, do you mind if I talk to your parents about it and see if it's okay? And I said, I don't have it. He said, well, you must live with somebody. So I reached in my pocket and I pulled out a single piece of paper. It had the telephone number of the foster home where I was living. So about a week goes by, and I'm walking down Berry Street, and Mr. D stops me. And he says to me, and I'll never forget it, come on inside, young man, it's okay. So, do you know for the next 10 years, Mr. Dees made sure that I made my way back there. Moment in time. And then there's Mr. Levinsky, my 4th grade teacher at PS 132 in Queens. So he taught me, no, he preached humor. He said, never underestimate the power of laughter in your life. He said, laugh long, laugh hard, and laugh as often as possible. In essence, what he was saying was it was therapeutic. It's good for your soul. Moment in time. And then there's Mr. Pollock, my elementary school gym teacher. I hope you guys have seen the theme here. So I'm 54 years old, and the only people I'm talking about was when I was in grade school. So if you're a teacher in this room, you need to understand the power that you have with your students. So don't ever underestimate that. But Mr. Pollock, he refused to hear the words, "I can't do it." He said, if you're going to be in my gym class, you will try. He said, trying and failing is better than not trying at all. Moment in time. So now we can fast forward. I'm a skinny, scrawny, 17-year-old high school student walking out of a McDonald's on Jamaica Avenue in Queens. And I can feel the F train rattling my body as it passed by in the L above. But something catches my eye. And it's a single glass door with a gold seal on there. This one said, Armed Forces of the United States of America. Now I want you to keep something in mind here. We're only about 3 years removed from the end of the Vietnam War. So there weren't long lines at the recruiting stations back then. This was a different time. But I opened the door, and there was a single flight of stairs there, 15, 20 steps at the most. When I was going up those stairs, it felt like 100. So I got up to the top of the staircase. The first office I came to was an Army recruiter. And I'm going to be real nice, and I'm going to say he was sloppy. His uniform jacket was open. His tie was undone. He was eating a sandwich, and the crumbs were falling on his shirt. So I kept walking. The next office was a Navy recruiter, and I think he would be classified as obese. His shirt was extremely tight. He had some kind of science project working for a beard, and his hands looked like he just got finished working on somebody's car. So I kept walking. The next office was an Air Force recruiter, and he was very pleasant. And we talked for about 5 minutes before he stopped me abruptly and said, hey, listen, you need to have a high school diploma before you can enlist in the Air Force. So I kept walking. Finally, I came to the office of the Marine Corps recruiter. And as soon as I looked in there, I saw a physical specimen. Someone that took pride in his appearance. His shirt was custom made, well pressed, wrapped around his biceps. His ribbons were displayed. He had a high and tight haircut. Looked like a putting green on a golf course. That's how it was manicured. As soon as he caught my eye, he said to me, come on in, young man. It's okay. Think about that. 10 years earlier, the exact words from Mr. Dees. And I can tell you this with absolute certainty. My wife's sitting right there. So I love my wife. I love my family. But the best decision I've ever made in my life was enlisting in the Marine Corps. By far. I went from a life of no direction to absolute direction. The Marine Corps taught me how to be a man, how to walk tall, be proud, honor, integrity, loyalty, attention to detail. I can go on about the Marine Corps forever, I promise you. I'm not going to do that to you, but I'll let my buddies in the back do that for you. So I can tell you this though, and I'm sure they would agree with me. In my mind, there are two types of Marines. There are Marines that still wear the uniform proudly, and then there are the other Marines that no longer wear the uniform. So I haven't worn a Marine Corps uniform since 1984, but I promise you I'm a Marine. Moment in time. In January of 1985, I joined the California Highway Patrol. Now, just out of curiosity, how many people remember the show Chips on TV with Ponch and John? All right, well, good. I was a chocolate chip. Yeah. So I did that job for 16 years before retiring from an injury. And I promise you, I took that oath very seriously. Very seriously. Law enforcement is a very, very difficult job. But guess what? We know what we sign up for. We know exactly what we're doing. And there's only one way to do that job, and that's the right way. And I can tell you I received so many awards and recognition, 5-time Mad Officer of the Year, I could go on, but I promise you that those awards meant more to other people than they did to me. Because I'm of the belief that you should not get an award for just doing your job. It's your job. You're supposed to do it. That's what you get paid for. It doesn't matter if you do it better than somebody else. It has nothing to do with it. You want to give an award to somebody? Right here. Exceptional. Remarkable. That's what gets rewarded right there. So, after retiring, I had 2 jobs in my life. Marine, highway patrolman. What am I going to do? Of course, you go into sales. So that's what I've been doing for the last 15 years, and let me tell you something, at a very, very, very high level. I've worked for some of the finest organizations in the world, including the one I work for right now, alongside of some of the most brilliant minds in the world. I worked for a company that was ranked 14th on Fortune magazine's best 100 companies to work for. Me, that foster kid from New York City. So, because of all that, I have this overwhelming urge, and my family is the same way, to serve, to give back somehow. And I hope everybody in here has the same feeling. But I'm going to do it this way. I think Martin Luther King Jr. said it best. And I was reading one of his books that he had written, and there was a passage in the book where he was reminiscing on the first time that he and Mrs. King visited Jerusalem. So they rented a car, and they drove from Jerusalem down to Jericho. And as soon as they got on that road, he turned to his wife and said, I can see why Jesus used this as a setting for his parable. So it's a winding, meandering road. It's really conducive for ambushing. So if you think about it, you start off in Jerusalem, which is about 1,200 feet above sea level. And by the time you get down to Jericho, 15 or 20 minutes later, you're about 2,200 feet below sea level. So that's a dangerous road. So in the days of Jesus, it came to be known as the Bloody Pass. And it's possible that the priest and the Levite looked over at that man on the ground and wondered if the robbers were still around. It's possible that they felt that the man on the ground was merely faking, and he was acting like he had been hurt and robbed just to seize them over there, to love them there for quick and easy seizure. So the first question that the priest asked, the first question that the Levite asked was, if I stop to help this man, what will happen to me? But by that time, the Good Samaritan had come by, and he actually reversed the question. And he said, if I do not stop to help this man in need, what will happen to him? And that's really the question in front of all of us today. What are you doing? Anything, something, to add value to the lives of people less fortunate than yourselves. So I'm going to end on this because I see a light flashing somewhere. Not really, but I'm going to end on this. And I'm going to talk directly to you young men and women right here. And anybody else that needs to hear it. If you're ever feeling down and like the weight of the world is becoming a little bit too heavy, your stress level is rising, and you really can't see more than 5 minutes into your future, then you really need to have something to hold on to. Someone that you can pick up the phone, call, and even if they're just going to listen to you, have something like that, a passage in a book that you can read that uplifts you. For me, I heard a poem more than 25 years ago, and it was written by an unknown author. And it goes something like this. We've mastered the air, conquered the sea, annihilated distance, and prolonged life. But we are not wise enough to live on this earth without war and without hate. I'm tired of sailing my little boat far inside the harbor bar. I want to go out where the big ships float, out on the deep where the great ones are. And if my frail craft proves too slight, the waves that sweep those billows o'er, I would rather go down in a stirring fight than drowse to death on the sheltered shore. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that inspiring presentation.